Bird, bugs, mouth. Hey, it is September the 28th, and today we're going to continue with our lecture on the Progressive Era, going into World War I. But if you have not taken the test yet on Canvas, you need to go in and do so. If you're having a problem taking the test, you need to let me know. I can come up with another option for you to take the test. But if you're in this course, you're supposed to take it in Canvas. If you submitted it through Google Classroom, send me an email letting me know. But I really need you to go into Canvas and take that test. So it's open. Do it. All right. All right. So moving right along. Yes, last time we were talking about how the United States got involved with the Mexican Revolution. And then we're going to get involved with something else. Who do you think this person is?
That's the Grand Duke of what's his
Archduke
name?
Ferdinand.
The sandwich that started World War I.
Yeah, you remember the video last year. Yeah, yes. There's his wife, Sophie. Yeah.
The sandwich?
Yeah, no, not Sophie the sandwich. His wife.
He said it was the sandwich that started World War I. Because the dude went to get a sandwich and the Duke.
And then he saw the Duke go by.
And he was like, bam!
Yeah, and like did his car break down or something like that? And he just couldn't resist that pesky anarchist / nationalist kind of.
The one that, can you imagine being known as the guy who started World War I?
That dude either got killed real fast or has like a massive legacy.
Well,
I mean, he has a pretty large legacy considering World War World War II only happened because of World War I, and that he technically sparked both world wars, the Cold War.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I could see the cause and effect there.
That probably. I don't know about the Vietnam War. Probably not the Vietnam.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could make a chain of events that World War I would lead to the conditions that would lead to the Bolshevik Revolution being successful. Well, the communists taking over Russia, and then of course, World War I also led to conditions for World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Bolsheviks, the communists, were in charge of Russia, that's going to aid in the spread of communism into China, which will lead to the Korean War and Vietnam.
Shows you how much impact one person
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conditions in place, a lot of volatile conditions.
It wouldn't have started with this if Archduke Ferdinand. It might have been a minor war, but the major world war that happened because of it probably wouldn't have happened if Archduke Ferdinand didn't die.
Well, here's the thing, too. You got to remember, a lot of other people have noticed this kind of thing, too. There's a lot of crazy people out there who type up manifestos and they commit like atrocious crimes, hoping to be that spark, right? So that kind of motivates some people. So it's a scary thing. There's a lot of people out there who would like to be the spark for what they are thinking of a revolution or a movement or just something even like terrible in their own life. So that's a subject for another discussion. That's a different discussion. All right, so World War I background. So we're going to start talking about the Great War. Europe had long enjoyed a balance of power, which was largely upset by the unification of Germany as a new powerful nation. So after the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's defeated. And after he's defeated and he's sent off to the prison island, St. Helena, where he's going to spend the rest of his life till he dies of like stomach cancer or something. Europe is going to come together, and the great powers of Europe are going to make up essentially lines of empire, and they're going to also make up agreements and where we're going to take over this part of the world, you're going to do that part of the world. This is how trade's going to be. Nobody's going to allow like radical democracy or anything like that. And they came to these agreements. Well, Germany wasn't a country yet when these agreements were made. When Germany becomes an agreement, it's going to want to become a great empire like the rest of them. But since it was never in the equation, this is going to upset the balance that was supposed to be intended for lasting peace in Europe. Germany was aggressively seeking to become a first world power and empire, just like other European nations. In response, Britain, France, and Russia made a defense pact called the Triple Entente. So this is like an alliance of countries that agree that if you go to war or if you are attacked, we will do the same. We will defend one another no matter what. On the other hand, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy will form their own defense alliance called the Triple Alliance. Both groups built up their militaries, planned for war, and swore to defend members of their alliance despite who was at fault. Prior to World War I, this is more on setting up the stage, Austria was in possession of Serbia, a country that had more in common with Russia and it also wanted independence. So Serbians are a Slavic people. Russia is also a Slavic people, so they speak a Slavic language. They have shared history in many ways. And if I remember,
kind of like gone down the path.
yeah. After the fall of communism, a lot of Eastern European countries went through a big mess, and Serbia was involved in a lot of ethnic cleansing and stuff like that regarding Albanians and Kosovars when after the fall of a communist dictator called Tito. You have a guy called Milosevic take over, and he's going to rise to power, essentially kind of like Hitler, blaming other races and leading to lots of mass graves and lots of innocent people murdered. It's very sad. But so Austria, it's like an imperial place. They're in charge of Serbia. Serbian people want to have independence, but it's kind of being held as a possession. Russia historically has sworn to be the protector of Slavic people. Russia still claims that today. That's why Russia, even today, Vladimir Putin is involved in places like Croatia, because they're claiming to free a lot of their Slavic speaking people in that country. It's an Eastern European country. Huh?
In soccer, they won the World Cup.
Really?
Yeah, they won.
Ah, shoot. Like Croatia, and what was that other country? I had a science teacher married to a lady from that country. What was her name?
Czechoslovakia?
No.
No, that place doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, it does.
No, I don't think so, right? That's right.
Czech Republic.
Yeah,
Czech Republic
Czechoslovakia.
exists, but Czechoslovakia doesn't exist. Different country.
It's the same land. I don't remember.
It's the same land, but they changed the
Same
name.
land, same
Let's
people.
split it in half.
Yeah, don't call it Czechoslovakia. Yeah, I'm not gonna think that it came off wrong.
We'll just agree to call it Czech.
Czech.
The Czech, yes. Yep.
Yeah, it's the thing. Yes, about your Eastern European history is it's messy. Yeah, the boundaries and the names are constantly changing.
You know what doesn't constantly change? The boundaries of America.
Wait, I don't get this one.
It doesn't constantly change.
Germany wants to be like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are for it, some people are against it. And
Yeah.
They go to war for that.
Not yet. We're building up.
They want to go to war for that.
Not yet.
No, Germany just
wars
wants
could-
to be powerful.
We're going to see the war's going to start later, though, because but everyone's so paranoid of one another that once something bad happens, one side's going to be like, "Oh, forget this. We better attack first."
Why are they paranoid?
Well, like for one, you're starting to see things like Germany starting to do things like they're starting to expand into Africa and spreading their empire there, and that's getting some of the other countries worried. But they don't really have anywhere to go. And one of the normal things for European countries is actually to be in a state of war. European countries go to war all the time. And this is a time period, like from the literature standpoint and the arts, hypermilitarism is really a big part of the culture in Europe right now. Young men are just, they're really fanatical about earning their honor in the field of battle. One famous thing, like when a young man in Germany went to college, they spent a lot of their time learning how to fight and stuff like that. And one thing that was a popular practice for Germans before they graduated college was they'd have their friends take like a saber, right, a sword, and it was kind of like chicken. You're not supposed to flinch, and so you won is if you didn't flinch, and your friend would take the saber and just thwack you in the face with it, and so they'd have pride in like having like a big saber scar, like somewhere on their face because they don't flinch. So it was really a lot of people.
That's still a thing.
No, it used to be way back when. Yeah.
People realized that probably wasn't smart after a couple people lost.
Oh yeah, they tried to ban that. They also had to change how Germans marched because they had a practice whenever they would march, they take their right hand and they bang their chest as hard as they could.
And they lactate.
They practiced it so much it actually activated the mammary glands in the left side of their chest, and so they had to stop that because they couldn't have their guys lactating. So it is just adventures in pre-World War I Germany. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of like that's like the mood. That's like the mood. These countries are building up big militaries. If you got a big military, your neighbor has a big military, and you're not talking very nicely to one another, you're kind of scared something's going to happen.
Oh, I see now. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the buildup.
So one.
It's all getting there.
That was seriously a thing with their marching.
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very prideful. And before this time too, when Germany was first being unified, they had already had a war with France and actually conquered Paris. And under very humiliating terms to France, they gave Paris back to France. They could have actually taken over half of Europe at the time. And this is before the Germans called themselves the German country.
So everybody would have been talking.
So Prussia. Well, maybe. The thing is, like,
When you start a new country, how do you start the language?
you take what people are speaking. I mean, like if you conquer a country, if you want them to speak your language, one way to do it is you could start schools. Another way is to make it, the only way to have official things done is through our language. If you do it long enough, people start picking up your language.
Well, when Germany wasn't a thing yet, but as it was made a thing,
Mhm.
did they like invent
The language.
German?
Now,
Or was it just native?
well, the thing is Germany was always there, and German-speaking people had been there since the Great Teutonic migrations after the fall of Rome. But these languages were there and evolved, but they were small, little principalities, right? Like during the time of Martin Luther, these were like hundreds of little kingdoms, hundreds of them, and they would like band together sometimes, and they'd fight each other sometimes. And like they were very poor countries. Since they were so disjointed, sometimes other countries would have a war and they would just fight on Germans' land in these little German kingdoms so they didn't mess up their own territory. So it's going to be like a battlefield and just a dumping ground. It's going to be known as like the poorest part of Europe for a long time. Let's go ahead and move on. Beep. Hey, there we go. Speaking of Germans, there they are with the little pointy hats. Got their helmets with the.
They look like little dinosaurs.
I wish I had a helmet collection. I really like helmets. I wish I had a helmet collection. I might do that one day.
Mr. Whitener, you should start a helmet collection.
I should after I start a donation collection because I'd be bored. All right. All right. More on World War I. Yeah, there's like so there's a lot. All right. So Austria with Germany's backing, remember they're allies. Made concessions against Serbia that would infringe upon their. Wait, did we talk about the assassination?
No? What? Who died?
Hey, I didn't put the assassination in here. All right, yeah, so I'm just going to say it verbally. All right, so what's going to start all this off is you have all of these things here, and then the Crown Prince of Austria is going to go make a trip into Serbia.
Can you change
Okay,
Where
I'll
is
change it.
Serbia?
Just so I can, because I already know.
It's east of Austria. So like you had like Germany, Austria, Serbia.
Crown
Hungary.
Prince is the one that's gonna get the crown.
Yeah, he's the guy who's next in line to be king, right? And so he's going to be assassinated by a group of anarchists who we talked about were problems before, but they also want independence for their country, young men. They're going to try to blow up the car. They manage to survive, and they're eventually, him and his wife are going to be shot to death. And so Austria is going to be very mad about this, right? So you killed my boy. And so Austria is going to demand that Serbia make concessions for this murder that would basically take away its sovereignty. That means take away its independence entirely. And Serbia was actually willing to meet them halfway. They were willing to give up a lot of things, but Austria apparently wanted too much. So Russia wished to defend Serbia from Germanic encroachment and began to mobilize their military. That means the Tsar Nicholas, told his forces to go ahead and move up to the border of Germany just in case. Well, guess what? When you put your soldiers to the border of a country just in case, usually a war happens. That's what happened in the Mexican-American War. We put a lot of our troops on the Texas-Mexican border just in case. And then war kicks off. That's what made the Cold War so scary. It's because we had soldiers like staring at each other across the border the whole
In
time.
1898,
Oh, bye.
Mexican-American War.
That's right.
The only reason I remember that.
All right. Germany preemptively made the first strike. This came, a lot of their battle plans was to, the main battle plan they had was over here. It's called the Schlieffen Plan, where a little bit about this. At this time, after German unification, Germany is known as like the leading cutting edge in industry, in the sciences, and also in military science. Most of the military manuals being published in this time, something like 90% were actually from Germany. There's only like 2 or 3% coming out of places like England. Germany had the best, most up-to-date military planning. Germans sent military officers to go watch the American Civil War and learn from that. They learned a lot from their invasion of France. They actually made a lot of military breakthroughs in that invasion. And then the Schlieffen Plan, the idea was that they could totally negate French protection altogether, simply by cutting through Belgium and going around their defenses. Problem is, Belgium was neutral, and that was an international crime to send soldiers through a neutral country without their permission. Belgium, however, decided to defend itself and was able to stave off the Germans long enough for the French and British to mount a defensive line. The battle lines were quickly entrenched in order to protect soldiers from deadly artillery and machine gun fire. This new form of artillery was starting to be used at the end of the American Civil War, where instead of just having smooth bore cannons on simple cartwheels, they start putting recoil springs in them. They start using cartridges that are more like rifle cartridges. They'll put things like timed explosives in them and things like that. So they're not simply
They would hit the ground and wait for a little bit.
They can. Now things like artillery that explodes above ground won't really be a thing until World War II. It'll start becoming more of a big thing, but still, it's pretty deadly. It hits the ground, boom, blows up. Everybody standing up around it's going to be turned into ground meat. And most importantly, machine gun fire. At the beginning of World War One, there was still mounted cavalry, where guys planned on charging in with their spears before pulling out their firearms. That didn't last too long with the machine gun. It made those poor ponies into like pony meat. So that like the war advanced pretty quickly. It's going to be known as the War of Industry.
That
Because-
line point goes was machine guns made pony meat.
Yeah, well, I mean, it ended the idea of a horse cavalry. That's it. It's extinct. You can't do it anymore. Machine guns in that. Like you couldn't have Napoleonic marching men like in the American Civil War go up to the enemy, because machine guns and artillery would just turn them into like corpses.
Mush.
Exactly. And well, the thing that stops this, once again, something that was learned in the American Civil War, is you dig into the ground in trenches. And that's the best protection you can get against these projectiles and these explosions. And of course, they wouldn't make them in straight lines. They would be made with a lot of corners and things like that. So if an artillery shell went inside, at least it would only kill a few people, and the walls would absorb it before it goes down the line. The spaces between these trenches were known as no man's land, filled with barbed wire, holes from the explosions. Not to mention things like the landmines. Often we're going to see the invention of poisonous gas. Things like mustard gas are going to be used against soldiers. Yeah.
Illegal
What is it
to
called?
use in war.
I can't say I'm sure, but I do know it's supposed to be like it's very deadly. It can damage your hearing. I mean, not your hearing, your vision. You can go blind from it. Eventually drown in your own lungs. It can make your skin blister.
Gas mask don't work.
Very important. Yeah, and a lot of the gas masks did not work. They did for the most part, but the thing is it would fall, and often people wouldn't know to put on their mask until somebody else started choking, and so then you just got like a split second to get yours on before it's too
So was
late.
it not visible? It's just like they just dropped some.
It's visible when it first comes out of the shell, but it's, from what I understand, is that a lot of times people wouldn't notice. It could be deadly in small amounts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and like modern ones that they experiment with, of course, are scentless and tasteless and stuff, and very very, very quick to use. They have different kinds now. They have blister
literally
agents, nerve
so
agents.
scary.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah,
they
it's
could-
scary
they could
stuff.
Make a scentless, tasteless neurotoxin
Mhm.
that just gets released in the air and kills millions of people.
Oh yeah, and they're usually like the descriptions of them are very bad, like seizing until you snap your own back and stuff like that. So that's not fun. That's something you expect
And
from
they
a
can do
cockroach.
that to massive crowds of people.
Well, luckily, we haven't seen anything like that. So
Maybe because it's time to do
it is.
Otherwise.
Well, let's hope that there's no like great world powers that are just so mad at each other.
They decide to be like, ah, screw it.
And I think the
Screw
fear of
Geneva
nukes.
Convention. Who made that in?
I think that the fear of retaliation, not just from the power you do it against, but like the whole world.
The whole world's
The
gonna hate
whole
you.
world will maybe just gang up on you and like,
Yeah.
you're just, no.
Because you're just too dangerous. You're too dangerous to keep around.
It's like
If you're
if
to
you,
do this to
you
one
do that,
person, who's just gonna stop you?
We're all gonna nuke you.
Yeah, and well, I mean, there you have the in essence mutually assured destruction, for all of its good and bad. You ready to move on?
Mr. Whitener, when
Yeah.
you're so, when a country is so bad that North Korea and US team up against them,
I can't imagine that. I really can't. But I mean, North Koreans, I don't even think they have enough gas to do anything. I mean, or
The
food.
only thing that they had is the old artillery. They have so much artillery that if we were to start a war, SoCal, South Korea would be gone.
Well, yeah, like Seoul would get hit really hard, they say.
So like die, and that would cause millions of casualties, and that's the only thing stopping war.
Now the thing is like we have a good estimate of their capabilities, but the problem is you never know how accurate it is.
How accurate, yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, they might. We're not. I mean, we know that they've had many paranoid years to prepare and plan all these things. But let's just hope it didn't go there, because I think that they know that if something did happen, they wouldn't exist anymore. But that would be a pretty sad way to start World War III, as if there was a happy one. All right. So the United States had mixed feelings about who was right or wrong in the war. Much of this division had to do with people's ancestry. Most Americans still trace their heritage back to England at this time, and many still remember France's aid to the U.S. during the American Revolution. Not personally, but, because people were learning about their American history, and they remembered the founders and people like Lafayette who helped us out.
Lafayette.
However, about 10% of Americans were from German stock, and many Irish immigrants still despise the British. Woodrow Wilson and his Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan, who actually ran for president before in the past as Democrat candidate, shared most of the nation's sentiment for neutrality and isolationism. Many Democrats saw involvement in the war as an extension of Republican expansionism. Remember guys like Teddy Roosevelt were involved with the Spanish-American War. Taft moved a lot of diplomatic and trade efforts into South America. So at this time, it was seen as a party thing. Wilson wished to wait out the war as long as possible and proclaimed his idea of the League of Nations, democracy, and freedom of the seas. We're going to talk more about his ideas of the League of Nations later, but just know he's trying to hash out this idea of having an international organization that might help promote commerce and world peace. So it's kind of like, let's think about this. So yeah, a lot of Americans did not want to be involved in a European war. That was kind of like George Washington's worst nightmare. So being involved in a European
Well, if
war.
you look at that, the UN is a thing.
He was afraid we'd become a country that we would make alliances like these guys and like send our kids off to go die in Europe, because most of the wars were happening over there by then. It's been a long time since we've had a war in Europe, but
Been a little too long. Let's start.
well, I'm not saying that.
It's never been too long without a war.
I beg to differ. We're talking.
Well, again, just because that's what you think doesn't mean everybody else thinks that.
Whoa.
I don't think everybody else thinks that. I just want war. Is that wrong? Is that wrong?
Yes.
I want-
I wouldn't recommend it, but there's plenty of it.
But I want like a really big war where like millions of
World War
people
III was
die.
already started at the beginning of the year.
Well, how about we have World War IV
How about
early?
World War IV early just turned into nuclear apocalypse.
All right, Logan, you build the giant robots and you can have it.
Yeah. I'll do it too, Mr. Whitener.
Okay.
Don't underestimate my dedication.
Where are you gonna get the uranium?
Don't be uranium. What are we living in the Stone Age? Just use normal power.
Use a black hole.
What are we using nuclear reactors to power these? No, all we need is just like normal power. Bro. I'll just
Wow.
find
The
I'll just-
Democrats saw it as an extension of the Republicans.
Yes, because a lot of it had to do with, remember you had Republican presidencies during this time, and it was during that time, during Teddy Roosevelt and Taft, is when Americans started getting and of course before that, expanding into places like the Philippines, Cuba, Hawaii, Guam, and of course started also getting involved in a lot of South America and stuff like that too. So they were like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" Because the idea of America becoming an empire was never very popular. And so that was, they were accusing the Republicans of doing something like that. But I mean, that's how
Man,
party
there was a
politics are.
song stuck in my head.
Baby Shark.
What is the song called? I don't know. The one with Washington and Hamilton talking about the bright haired man. No.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Outnumbered, outplanned.
From Hamilton.
I've never been able to sit through more than 5 minutes of a musical a day in my life.
Have you ever seen Hamilton? Have you ever listened to any Hamilton songs?
I've heard bits of it and I turned it off. I don't know. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Like rap.
I don't like musicals in general. It doesn't matter if it's rap or not. And I just don't know. I'm very eclectic in my musical taste,
You like
and I don't like most things.
I can tell you're.
I like classical music and some other stuff.
like
Death metal.
Yeah,
mostly.
I was about to say
Mostly.
that one, yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you know.
It can't be all of it, not all of it, but
No,
not a lot of it.
no.
But even there, I'm very, very picky. And so, because if it's like the vulgar stuff, I can't stand it.
I like World of Water.
Hey, you already move on next one?
Yeah.
Did somebody say no song?
SpaghettiOs. Huh?
What?
Yeah, you can.
Have
It's-
you ever heard it?
I have.
That used to be a commercial thing back when I had commercials.
Is that the Titanic?
Spaghetti I haven't
No.
heard name in years.
This is the Lusitania.
Has anybody had SpaghettiOs anytime recently?
My kids had them a couple days ago.
I like chicken and dumplings. Those are good.
Dude, I love chicken and dumplings.
That southern canned food stuff.
No, I've never had that, but I just want. Honestly, have you ever had like authentic, like dumplings?
They were okay. My mom did.
No, like authentic.
I don't know.
If his mom made it, how is that not authentic?
Well, I mean, is
Are
your
you calling
mom
my mom back?
is your mom Asian?
What? Oh, that was
Like Asian dumplings.
Like, okay, well, you didn't specify.
I meant Asian.
All right. So, don't worry, the U.S. will get involved in World War I, as you probably already know. Though the U.S. did not commit its forces to the war, it did become a lending nation as its businesses made loans to the belligerents in Europe. So, a belligerent is one of the people or one of the countries that's fighting. So, this is going to, and this. It's not the first time we try to do this. We always, throughout many times in history, we see that European powers are fighting, and we try to essentially make a little money off of it. Though this lending greatly boosted the U.S. economy, the loans greatly favored England and France. So we were selective. So the United States was still like, well, we will lend some to the German powers and stuff like that. But really, the favor always went to the Entente. In 1915, a ship called the Lusitania, a British ocean liner, was sunk by German U-boats. And so U-boat is U for underwater. And so at the time, they didn't have very good abilities to acquire targets and distinguish if they're a war boat or not, from my understanding. So the German U-boats would go out, and often they would sink ships. The Lusitania, let me see, of the 1,198 of the about 19,000 people aboard were killed. 128 of the dead were Americans. The Germans claimed that this ship was carrying war supplies. And it actually was, but it still had a lot of civilians on board. Wilson convinced the Germans to end their unrestricted U-boat warfare But William Jennings Bryan resigned as Secretary of State due to his belief that these actions would lead to war. So William Jennings Bryan was a sworn pacifist, and so he didn't want. He wanted to try to just stay out as much as possible. He wasn't comfortable with the lending. He didn't want Wilson to try to make demands of any of the war powers, even though 128 Americans were killed. So during this time, Congress approved the doubling of the U.S. military for preparation for the war. Something similar is going to happen before World War II. We're going to help out England financially, and bad things are going to happen. And so we're going to start getting ready for the war before we enter it. We know something's going to happen. Yeah.
How did he convince the Germans to end their U-boat warfare?
Well, it was a diplomatic thing because he threatened to get involved with the war. It was like, hey, we will declare war on you if you do this again. So Germany is like, oh gosh, we can't bring in another country against us. Okay.
Especially us, because we were like,
Wait, why did you do that?
Who?
I didn't listen. I kind of like.
U-boats killed a whole bunch of Americans.
Yeah, this
Americans.
ship up here, the Lusitania, was sunk and it had 128 Americans killed on it. And so we were like, hey, you can't kill our people like that. And so we
We're gonna start
threatened.
fighting.
Yeah, we threatened war.
Remember last time anybody did something to our boats?
Oh, so the
Extinction.
Germans killed Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
William Jennings, the other guy,
And
Wilson.
then there were a lot of
convinced the
President
Germans
Wilson.
to stop
Yeah.
what was going on.
But this isn't going to be the end of U-boat warfare, though. They're going to agree to it. But they're going to bring it back later. So
Yeah, and then we invented better submarines. Actually, our first submarines were in the Civil War, correct?
I think
They
there
were
was
really
one.
crude.
There was one like experimental thing they had like in the
They
Revolution,
had
right?
pedals. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had like little pedals. And they would like pedal. And it
Mhm.
worked for about half a second until everybody got tired and they sank and all that.
You gotta keep up that cardio.
Yeah, it worked for like half a second though. That's pretty cool. They just didn't have the means of powering and like keeping up a ship like that. Now we do.
I think we'll do one more after this, and then we'll call it good for the day. Now, not this week, but next Friday, I think we're going to have our next house meetings. I don't know what it's going to be about, but I think that's going to be a B day anyway. So,
Won't affect you, right?
well, it won't affect this class. It'll affect my other U.S. history class.
Right.
Well, no, after them, because I don't
Right,
have.
Mr. Whiteman?
Nope. Well, it just means I'll have to eat my lunch super, super quick and then go find out wherever the kids are. Because I don't know where Volpus is going to meet at again. Because last time we met, we just kind of went outside and then it got too hot. And so we finally came back in here.
Yeah, you know who did that to us?
No.
Miss Martinez.
Oh, well, that's fine. If we don't come up with a place by the next time, I'm just going to tell everybody to come in here.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll have our other teachers with us then too. Because it was just me and Miss Cook. And hopefully next time we'll have Mrs. Carter and Mr. Hamilton. Find out some stuff. Hey, you ready to move on to the last one? No. Okay. But yeah, as you see, it's like there's a buildup for everything. There's a buildup for the war in general. There's a buildup for the United States getting involved in the war.
There's a build-up for everything.
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
mean,
It's not like super quiet and then suddenly, boom.
well, even things like surprised us, totally surprised us, like 9/11. There was a buildup to that, you know. Like all tragedies, if you don't find out till after the fact usually, but you can see that there is a buildup to many of these things. Heck, they even go through personal tragedies often. Not always, but usually. All right, moving right along. Last one for the day. Boop. here we have Wilson declaring war. So that's all right. So last one. Though Germany pledged to end U-boat warfare without restrictions, tensions were still high in America. Half the world was at war at the time. We were doubling the size of our military, as you saw. Some people are cheering for one side, some for another. Some are calling for us to go to war. Some are saying we need to stay out. The country was super divided. In 1917, though, once again, we're going to capture another telegram. Remember, we caught one from the Spanish ambassador before the Spanish-American War. Now we catch one, but going from Germany to Mexico, known as the Zimmermann Telegraph. In this telegram, Germany is going to offer Mexico all the lands lost in the Mexican-American War, such as Texas and New Mexico, if they'll just attack the U.S.
How did they do that? Like, what language were they speaking?
Beep, 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 beep. You know, like on Morse code going down the telegram line.
Yeah, what was the common language?
Who would have translated
Morse.
all that?
Oh, the common language back then was probably French. I don't know how they caught it, but I'm sure it was easy back then considering it was also low tech. Because it's not encoded or anything like that. It's just a simple electric current going down the wire, and anybody could listen to it.
How do you send it from Germany to Mexico?
That's a good question.
You send it through the water.
That's a good
Yeah.
question. I honestly,
Spread all the way up to the water.
let me see. Cross
Yes.
Atlantic
Does not mean every-
Telegraph. Let me see if there's a transatlantic telegraph.
At NASA, they
Boy.
Yeah, the idea was conceived in 1854 for a transit. I guess it was like, to secure a charter, a well-insulated line across the floor of the Atlantic Ocean. Wow, I guess somebody. Yeah, I never thought. Yeah, 1956. Wait, 1956. What? No, it's a phone. Never mind. All right.
Wait, what happened? Okay, Google.
In 1858, the first transatlantic telegraph was made.
But how?
They laid a cord cable down in the beginning of the bottom of the ocean. It was insulated and everything.
What?
Yeah.
They laid it all the way throughout the entire ocean.
We have that right now today.
Dude, that
Like,
sounds-
I understand, but with their technology, did they die?
no, I'm sure they just rolled it off the back of the boat as they chugged along.
Yeah,
That's my
really?
guess.
Or they could
all you have to do is weight it,
Yeah.
True.
and it would eventually hit the
I
bottom.
would have eventually hit the bottom.
hopefully.
How much more did that take?
Many miles.
Yeah, at least 3.
Yeah, it's a
Say
real
at least
thing.
3.
Yeah, at least
At least
3.
a couple.
Yeah, apparently there was 4 of them. Yeah, they laid 4 going from across the Atlantic all the way to the Americas. Yeah. Interesting.
That's crazy.
In any case, we intercepted the message, and we got a little mad that Germany was asking our neighbor to attack us. The telegram also encouraged Mexico to ask Japan to attack the U.S. as well in order to distract us from Europe.
How that worked out.
Mexico turned them down, but most Americans were pretty mad about this. So in 1917, Congress approved the U.S. entry into war. If you ask countries to attack another country, that sounds like a pretty good cause to go to war.
I really think Mexico is really smart in that area, because if they had attacked us, would have
If they
been
had
no.
said,
You know
Well,
why not?
You got to
You know what
remember,
happened last time?
Mexico is having a lot of unrest with the Mexican Revolution right now. They were in no state. Like, they were too busy trying to figure out who was in charge.
Keep their country together.
Yeah.
To try to catch someone else.
So that would have made no sense. That would have been like during the American Revolution, be like, hey, America, could you give an attack Africa right now? It's like, what?
Could you like attack Africa so we can get all the profit?
Such as
Yeah.
Texas.
Wilson advertised this as the last war of the world, he promised, and a chance to apply progressive principles worldwide. So once again, we're going to see later, he's going to push for the idea of this League of Nations that would be kind of like a world Congress kind of thing, where the world would come together and come up with rules to try to maintain world peace. And And it's worked ever since. No, wait, no, it didn't. But that's okay. You could say there's merits to it. You could say there's faults. And that's our last one for the day. If you're joining us online, once again, please go into Canvas, take the test. If you have a problem with it, or if you need it through another format for some reason, make sure you email me. So it's ewhitener@responsiveed.com. And I'll see you later, kids, on Wednesday.